Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with the Oathbreaker EDHREC.com site. So I'm getting an overview of this website as this was a very highly anticipated and highly requested undertaking by EDHREC to do some data similar to what they do with EDHREC for the Oathbreaker format. So I've done a few videos on Oathbreaker. I think it's the real deal. A lot of people have criticized me saying that it's just going to be another Tiny Leaders or another Frontier. I disagree. I think this is a very, very fun format, and it definitely is different enough from Commander. A lot of people just say, well, why don't they just make Planeswalkers legal in Commander and create, or then it will absolutely destroy Oathbreaker. And I disagree. I like the 20 life. I like the signature spell. I think it gives this a very unique way to play, and the casuals so far are loving it. And so far, too, the activity for people posting deck lists on EDHREC or on the sites that EDHREC scrubs their data from is pretty high. Comparatively to EDH, there's been, in the past week, 69 decks of Arlinn Kord. If you were to go over to EDHREC, Commanders for this week are in the 120s. So at least it's about half as popular right now as Commander. And if Oathbreaker is half as popular as Commander, that is a good sign for the format. And that will mean that cards will start to move up in value due to the Oathbreaker format. So we're going to kind of look at the data here from the Oathbreaker site to see what is trending. And I'm going to start using this in my Rogue Roundups for sure. We are going to be replacing the Pauper format for the 5 cards that we pick for Rogue Roundup with Oathbreaker. So we're going to have Oathbreaker, Legacy, Commander, Modern, and Standard rather than Pauper. Of course, we might add Pauper back in the mix if Pauper starts gaining some traction, but the format as a whole is pretty stagnant. The bannings really didn't do anything to the format. We still have black-blue control, Kudatha, Boros, and Burn being the 1, 2, 3 decks. People thought it'd be all Tron. Tron actually isn't doing that well in Pauper. So I guess the problem is more than just Gush and Gataxian Pro, but it's just that blue is so much more efficient in the format, blue and red, especially in the Pauper format. But I digress. That's a video for another day. Let's get back to the Oathbreaker format. So looking over here, it looks like the Arlinn Kord and Moonmist are the most popular Oathbreaker plus signature spells, followed by Nicol Bolas and the Elder Spell, and then Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge with Thoughtcast, and Saheeli, Sublime Artificer with Thoughtcast. If we keep going down the list, we're seeing the Huatli, the Sun's Heart with Tower Defense. That seems a pretty fun little one to make. Ugin with All Is Dust. Nicol Bolas. So Nicol Bolas actually has another signature spell with Deliver Unto Evil. And Ral Storm Conduit with Expansion to Explosion. If we just look at the top Oathbreakers, Nicol Bolas has the most listings at 97 decks, with Ral right behind at 87, Nissa, and then Saheeli. So it looks like people are working backwards with they're picking a Planeswalker from War of the Spark and building decks around those particularly. If we go back, it looks like Arlinn Kord and Tamiyo would be the next popular commanders after the War of the Spark format. So good sign for the format. This is exactly how, if you look at EDHREC, people are building decks. They usually choose a card they crack out of a pack, and hey, I should build a commander out of this, and that's what they're doing with Oathbreaker. So this format is still wide open. People are still messing around with lists. There are a lot more powerful commanders, or Oathbreakers for sure, than the War of the Spark. I actually think that War of the Spark Planeswalkers are quite weak in comparison to some of the Planeswalkers of yesteryears, as they're specifically done that. They're printed at like rarities of rare and uncommons rather than a lot of them at mythics, and toned down on the power level to match that. So there are plenty of Planeswalkers in the format to choose from. I'm going to expect to see some other Planeswalkers start to make this list. Looking over some of the other more popular Oathbreakers, Nissa, Steward of the Element, is another one that is kind of neat. This is one that I kind of want to brew around. People are running a lot of different signature spells with Nissa, Steward of Elements, if we look over the Nissas. And there were a lot of different ways that people were building the decks. But again, trends are starting to show up with these different Oathbreakers, and I think that we're going to be able to start to read some signals to where the market is going to move with these particular decks. So good news is, like, Arlinn Kord has already seen some movement, and even cards like Moonmist have seen some movement. I mostly give credit to the video by Tolarian Community College. It has over 80,000 views for the Arlinn Kord deck, so of course there is going to be a lot of people just building that to learn at community college and then actually posting it online, and it's going to give a little bit of bias towards Arlen cord due to that. So if Tulane Community College's video can move a Arlen cord, let's expect to see that these top Oathbreakers are also going to start moving the cards that are going in their deck. So one of them I'd like to show is Tamiyo. It seems like this one is one of the older cards from Eldritch Moon, and then you can start to see the signature spells they're using with Tamiyo. There's Final Devastation, Winds of Abandon, Contentious Plan, Neoform. Contentious Plan is pretty good too because Tamiyo is incredibly powerful if you can get Tamiyo up to the -7. So you draw 3 cards and get an emblem that you may cast an online card from your hand without paying their mana cost. So that one is really paired quite well with a card like Contentious Plan. We have like Neoform. Neoform seems to be a very popular card in a lot of green-based decks. Green-blue based decks to go and tutor up specific combinations, and you can kind of scroll down on the Oathbreaker to see some of the other cards that are running with Tamiyo. So EDHREC has this set up just like they do, or Oathbreaker.edhrec has it set up the same way that EDHREC is set up. It will show you the new cards from the latest sets. You should always be very familiar with these because when a new set comes out, you can click on a popular commander like Marion or Muldrotha and see the cards that are running in those from the new set in those decks, and you can always then anticipate that those cards will go up in value because there's just a ton of Muldrotha, Marion, Atraxa decks out there. You should be very, very familiar with those deck lists because any card in those decks are poised to have the demand to outstress the supply eventually for those cards, especially for a new set. So if we go down the list for high synergy cards, just like EDHX, we'll start to show the cards that are going in. The Tamiyo deck, it looks like Birds of Paradise, Noble Hierarch, Swords of Plowshare have a higher rate that are in this deck than other decks, and we look at the top cards that are run. You can see that it's all over the place right now. Typically if you look at even like Muldrotha decks or Atraxa decks, you're going to have above 33% of cards being in a particular deck. Cultivate, very similar to Commander, is seeing a lot of play in the Oathbreaker format, and you can just again scroll down to see the cards that are showing up in those lists. So let's go back to the most popular commander of the Nicol Bolas, the Dragon God, and see the cards that are being played the most in this deck. So Flux Chandler, seeing a lot of play in any deck that runs blue, pairs very well with Planeswalkers. Narset, this is going to have a lot of Planeswalkers to pair with Nicol Bolas. Narset, Ashiok, God Eternal Kefnet has a high synergy. We look down here, though, like Bedevil. Bedevil is seeing a lot of play. Hour of Devastation. Where you want to find is kind of outliers. So here's one that I'd like to showcase is Dark Intimations. So Dark Intimations is kind of cool for this particular deck because it's bulk from Aether Revolt. But if the Nicol Bolas decks, and this can actually go on the Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh or Nicol Bolas the Planeswalker, Dark Intimations is probably going to go in all of those decks because each opponent sacrifices a creature or Planeswalker, then discards a card, you return a creature or Planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, then you draw a card, and whenever you cast a Bolas Planeswalker, exile Dark Intimations from your graveyard, that Planeswalker enters the battlefield with additional loyalty counter. So it's going to allow your Nicol Bolases to come in a little bit stronger, and if you're casting them from your command zone, and I've already cast a Dark Intimation, so I think it pairs a little bit better with like the Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, you're definitely going to cast it before you cast your Bolas. So this is a card you should definitely think about if Oathbreaker is going to take off, that this could have a price increase. We can come over here to Card Kingdom to see if there is any movement. It still does seem to have the 8 plus cards available. If we switch to foil, this is also something that could give a bit more information, and that does seem to me that like there is some movement in Dark Intimations if it is only 2 in stock with the $2 price tag. So that's a good sign for the Oathbreaker format. Again, a lot of these cards have a lot of overlap from Oathbreaker into EDH, so there's kind of the justification. I think there's a better out for these type of cards because the vast majority of them will have that overlap. So if you do invest for Oathbreaker and for whatever reason this particular format does not pan out or does not come to fruition, you can just rely on those cards probably going up anyways from Commander. There are some exceptions with cards, but for the vast majority of these cards, there's going to be a ton of overlap. So it's just, in my opinion, going to add even more demand to the already heavily demanded Commander cards for these particular cards. It looks like in this format, cards like Cyclonic Rift, Damnation, Baleful Strix are very, very popular in the Commander format. and so on and so forth. So interesting enough, I just want to bring attention to the oathbreaker.edhrec.com. I think that this should be something you add to your resource for your portfolio and for future targets. I am definitely have a lot of confidence in this particular format, and that's why I'm replacing Pauper with it. I think there will be more demand for this format than there will be for Pauper, unless we do have like a Pauper 3.0 where people are sick of the price of standard. I think we're gonna have to go through a standard that's incredibly expensive for people to switch over to Pauper, or we really need some support from Wizard of the Coast before Pauper can have another resurgence. So until then, we're going to be checking out Oathbreaker. I'm going to give my opinions on the form or on the cards you should spec in on the Rogue Roundups for sure, and be looking for more Oathbreaker content on my channel over at the Rogue Deck Builder for unique brews. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and definitely check this out. Do not be caught lagging behind with these particular cards. This is Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.